Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Great Minds podcast. Everything happens for a reason. We're just here asking why. My name is Uriah Gillespie, philosopher.
I'm Michael Hasseth. Hello.
You don't want to call yourself a philosopher?
I don't have any titles. I'm just here.
Okay. All right. Well, we are going to be talking today about some very interesting subjects. You know what this podcast is all about if you have watched or listened to it at all. This podcast is all about philosophy, psychology, and politics. Um, so yeah, that is what we are talking about. So today, for politics, we're going to talk about probably the biggest news story right now going on, which is the White House Correspondent's dinner shooting. And for our main topic, we are going to answer the question of the day, which is why do we follow the status quo? And then we will also answer a burning question from one of our most devoted fans. So let's get started. So the White House Correspondents' dinner shooting. Mike, you said when we were prepping, you said you didn't know much about it. So I'm going to let you talk about what you know about first.
All right. Well, there's not a whole lot I do. Like I said, I know that it happened. I know my first gut reaction when I heard that it happened, but other than that, I haven't seen any videos or read anything, so I'm not like I basically can react to it. I can't really say
Okay.
I am informed enough to speak anything about it.
Okay. So, pretty much from what I know, at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, a armed gunman came in. From the videos I saw, he didn't even get into like the main room that they were all in, the main dining room. He was immediately caught outside by like Secret Service. But there was a fight, and pretty much in the videos that I saw, everyone was sitting around, and then they heard two loud noises that sounded like gunfire, and then I saw there's been a couple of pictures of the gunman. I think he didn't have a shirt on or something like that, but pictures of the gunman like being like pinned on the ground. From what I heard, they did kill him. So that's probably what happened. But he so according to like sources, they said that he had written kind of a manifesto about an hour online on social media about an hour before he went in. Oh, and they said he also had knives on him. But they said he wrote a manifesto, and it I can't remember all of what it said, but it in essence said, "I can no longer stand by while a rapist and a PDF file is like running the government," and he was pretty much making a stand and saying like, everyone's saying just do it, I'm gonna be the one to just do it. And so there and so there was that. And they actually read his manifesto on 60 Minutes because they had a 60 Minutes interview with Trump after all of it, and they read it to Trump, and Trump said, "I'm going to answer that." He said, because I knew you were going to read that, and you read that because you're a disgraceful person, and you guys are horrible people. And he said, I'm not a rapist. And the news interviewer interrupted him and said, "Oh, did you think the gunman was talking about you?" Um,
I did hear about that. I saw the just like a clip of that part.
yeah.
So yeah.
Um, so that was really interesting that nobody ever said his manifesto, the gunman's manifesto, was about Trump, but Trump just assumed that it was about him, which really tells a lot.
Yeah. So did this gunman actually get in the room and like get an aim on him or anything, or was this
No,
just all in a room outside? So
no, this
Trump
is
didn't even survive a shooting, it was just an attempted shooting.
yeah. So yeah, because in the videos you're
Okay,
watching,
people have been
you
talking like it was another shooting.
no, you in the videos I've seen, you hear like two, well, they'd be two gunshots, and then like outside the room, and then everybody in the room just like scrambled, got under tables, and they like the Secret Service physically picked up JD Vance and like brought him out of the room, and they got Trump down, got him out of the room. And then there's a couple more videos. Uh, oh, I can't remember who was it. Somebody had like a pregnant wife and was getting them out of the room. And then RFK Jr. was surrounded by Secret Service agents being taken out of the room, and his wife was chasing after him trying to get protection. And like they were just caring about RFK.
Oh.
Um, yeah. And then Wolf Blitzer didn't do anything. He just sat there and kept eating. Yeah. Good old Wolf Blitzer. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, that has been really really interesting to see that all play out. Now, um, when looking online at in pretty much every video, there was the same comment, and I'd be surprised if it. I wouldn't be surprised if it was the same person, but on every video there was somebody who put the comment "lights, camera, action," and like the entire comment section on every video was like, "This was completely staged. It looks completely fake," and like they just did this so that he could uh, um, continue to like make the news stop talking about like Iran and stuff like that. Which is funny because we said he made the news talk about it. He did the stuff in Iran to make the news stop talking about the Epstein files.
I,
So it's
I don't know if it's to get the news to stop talking about it at this point. If what do they call this? It's like something to do with a fire hose. It's like fire hose propaganda or whatever.
tactics.
Where well basically they just hit you with so much all the time that you just become apathetic and don't care anymore about what's true, what's not true, what even works or does like what is and it work. I think that's working beautifully.
You
It's
become desensitized.
it's a strategy that first was at least recognized and like written about, I think, or I don't know if it was published or what, but it first came out of Russia, and then we picked it up from them, and we've been doing it. I mean, they've been doing that your whole life with like, but it's basically just like putting enough stuff out there that you're not sure about, you know. So, the very first thing I thought when I heard this before I thought anything else was that probably was fake, or at least but now that I'm finding out that it wasn't even like the other one where he got shot at or anything, I'm just like, I mean, yeah, that would be easy to stage, but I don't know. Maybe I'm probably the weird one here thinking that this isn't actually that big of a deal. I lived in Minneapolis. I've had been around and close to shootings and stuff. Not that that's awesome, but you know, if they didn't get a clean shot at you and then they were taken out immediately afterwards,
Yeah.
what what's the big deal? It's I get it. It's not like it's a nothing. Somebody came in and there was shots fired near the president and stuff. People are going to talk about it. This is going to be the news cycle for however long this kind of stuff lives for until they put the next thing on us. What do you give this before it's not even 50% of the news cycle anymore? Like maybe a week and a half
Oh yeah,
before it's like completely
it'll be
entirely
something
we've
else.
moved on to the next thing. How that's so everything is so rapid, big, and then gone so fast. How do you even process any of this stuff anymore? You know?
Well, that's why
And
you
whether
sit
it's fake or it's not fake, how do you even process or deal like what am I supposed to do with this information?
right.
You
You are,
know?
Mike,
I
and that's why you sit down, relax for an hour, and listen to the Great Minds podcast.
there you go. There you go.
Yeah,
But that's
shameless
just what
plug.
what I'm saying is like I think that regardless of whether or not it's staged, if it's entirely accurate to the story that we've been given, an amalgamation of the two, that's what I would guess. But what regardless, it's all still like what are we supposed to do with this? It's just a needle in a haystack of crazy things, you know?
Yeah,
It really is. And at what point are they're not really I'm not distracted at this point. I'm just burnt out. Like they're parading it all out in front of us. It's not like they're hiding anything going on with the war or whatever you want to call it, whatever kind of name for conflict we have that's not officially a war because somehow that's different. We're killing people and people are dying with weapons and bombs and guns. I call that war.
I
Like, yeah,
mean,
what
I
do we
that's
do?
how
What
it
how
rolls
are we
well.
supposed to handle this? What do we do next week when there's another or 2 weeks from now when we do this again? And there's some big thing going on too, and that's all, you know.
True, very very true, and we won't even know what it is until it happens.
No. But I want to know what I'm gonna do with that information and what I'm supposed to do with this information. What are you
Yeah.
doing with all this? How are you handling all of this stuff?
How am I handling it?
Not
Um
just this, but like the entire world for like the last 5 plus years has just gotten so crazy, you know?
it has
So like
gotten
what do
crazy.
you do? What do you do? Specifically you
Yeah. What do I do to what do you mean to like keep sane?
to just process how the amount of crazy things that you've bore witness to.
Um well, it's
Like
I mean it's I do what I always did growing up, which was that I live my life and I do my work and I have my regular routine. And I mean, up until Trump, no decisions the president made really ever like very harshly affected me. Um, and so like, I mean, yeah, I just live my life. But I mean, I guess I cope with it by talking to people online and discussing like things that are going on, remembering the past, remembering the good times of the past. Definitely hoping for the future, and I mean that's really the bottom line. Is all we can really do is do our part, no matter how little it is, to make a better future. Like I mean, like we've talked about in other episodes. Um, Once Trump is gone, whether like that's through like legal means or he dies from old age or whatever it may be,
yeah.
the business still has to run. Companies still have to make money, and there will be more. What we have to do is we have to do what like the heroes in like superhero comics do, and we have to keep our eye out for people who grew up like Trump and are growing up like Trump, and we need to make sure that there is never another Trump.
That's fair. But
Yeah.
yeah, like you were saying, we just have to live our lives. So then
Yeah.
ultimately what this all is doing is we're just watching it, and it's affecting us mentally greatly by watching it, but we just keep doing our thing. And so that's kind of why I am to the point where I'm at, where I don't try so hard to be nearly as informed, because the information doesn't, I me knowing just makes me feel bad, versus it doesn't actually change anything. And everything that's really that important makes its way to me so fast
It
anyways.
it
I have
does.
no reason to seek it out. So,
Yeah, it
but
does. But I firmly believe that being informed gives you a voice in this world. If
oh
you,
yeah, and I'm not saying not to be informed, but I'm just saying I'm not seeking out the bleeding edge of being informed either,
yeah,
because it's so like by the time that it comes out, there's so many stories coming out about it from, and the way that everybody spins everything to their own perspective and agenda and stuff, it's like, how can you even know what you're.
yeah,
So I feel like by the time it gets to me and then I can become informed of it, it's at least gotten to evolve a long enough time where maybe there's a little bit more of a solid basis to like what is actually happening, instead of being on the bleeding edge of reactionary.
right.
So
When I was a kid, and me and you grew up in the same town when we were growing up,
yeah,
um, and you went to the library, right?
I've gone to the library. Yeah.
Yeah. In the library, there was a poster on the wall that had a saying on it that I won't forget, and it said, "The more you read, the more you know. The more you know, the smarter you grow. The smarter you grow, the bigger your voice when speaking your mind or making your choice." And I always thought that was super cool.
Right. But I guess what I'm saying is, where do you think that it offers you an advantage to be on the bleeding edge of everybody talking about exactly what's happening as it happens and as it unfolds? Or do you think that that just opens up more room for speculation and uh, personal theory, I guess I'll call it, even though I don't really like when people use the word theory. The word theory is so bastardized nowadays, anyways. I'll just bastardize it myself. So we'll call it personal theories.
what is the alternative?
Uh, well, like I said, just I guess allowing stories at least enough time to unfold so that there is some information that you can go off of. Like, you know how often things happen where all we're talking about is speculating the theories of it, and the actual real, I mean, if the real truth comes out at all for things, there's so many things where you don't ever actually find out. You
Oh,
can only speculate.
what
But I
you're
mean, if
saying is you want more time to get out of the theory
more
phase
time to
instead.
get out of like the what everyone's just bullshitting on the internet, because
Yeah,
this is what they think happened when nobody knows what the hell actually happened yet, period. That's
yeah.
not a good informed period for me. That's just everybody riding the emotional wave of what happened and then regurgitating the same information back to each other that is not enough. And you're either going to create your own conspiracy theory about it where it's like trying to fill in the facts, or you're going to wait and go with what they people say, and none of that is even right anymore nowadays. Like, I'm so skeptical of things. I'm just like, I don't believe the official narrative, and I don't believe the conspiracy theory, because I really don't think those guys figured it out either. So, so
I
yeah, what I just try and give it a little more distance, and to at least to really, if you want to become informed about something, because you need time for something to be studied and known. So like, if you want to be really informed on something, you can know what's going on the bleeding edge. But I think we've created this strange beast with the way that the internet's gone, and the way that the like news cycle, and everything is just constantly always now, and we're all so interconnected to it. You used to find out like about something months after it happened in other countries and stuff. Now, we're
Yeah.
also connected to the whole world, that like both you get to, it's like a double-edged sword, because you get to know everything that's going on right away, and then you get to hear everything everybody thinks about it, and also then you know everything, and so there's a lot more pain, because it used to just basically be like your little corner of the world, and you could see the sufferings of your community, and like it would kind of come around and go around. But then now when you can see the sufferings of the whole world online, you're just constantly in pain if you're looking for it, because you're just going to constantly see all of the sufferings of every community everywhere, and you're going to think the whole world's bad all the time, because you're so informed that you don't know how to like map that onto your own reality in your own little corner. And so I you have to be wary of what you think being informed means, because I think it's very important to be informed in a conversation, but that doesn't mean you need to always be riding the narrative as everyone's talking about it, you know.
I I get what you're saying.
So I don't know. That's a lot. I said a lot about that. I didn't know I
You
had so much to say
did.
about that, but we can move on from that.
You
Uh,
did. And I'm sure it helped a lot of people get to sleep.
Maybe. I don't even know if it made any sense, but you know.
um but yeah, we do have one person watching in the chat, which I am really happy about.
You know,
One person watching. If you want to ask a question, put it in the live chat, and we might be able to answer it. Or if you have any comments, just let us know or identify yourself. All right, so that is kind of the end of our politics segment, and kind of not, because I really wanted to. It's really important. I wanted to make a point to answer the question that we got from one of our fans today, which is also on the subject of politics. So our question comes from a woman named Barbara, and she says the primary purpose of the United States Supreme Court is to serve as the highest tribunal in the nation and the final arbiter of the law. Established by Article 3 of the U.S. Constitution, it acts as a guardian and interpreter of the Constitution, ensuring that the laws and actions of the government align with constitutional principles. So her questions are kind of threefold. Her first main question is, what happens when the court seems to abandon their loyalty to the Constitution and betraying the oath of that office by showing favoritism to a political party and seemingly unabashed and unswerving support and protection of a sitting president that balks at any and all guardrails to preserve law and decency? And then she also goes on to ask, can the United States function without a Supreme Court? Or can we rewrite the rules and say that there must be equal representation on both major parties? Well, let's break this down. So first off, in short, what happens when the Supreme Court shows favoritism to a political party and goes and pretty much blatantly goes against the law in order to help a sitting president?
I mean, if we're no longer following the rules, then we're not playing the same game that we were before, you know?
Exactly.
So it's just it's fascinating and a little bit horrifying. A lot of it, but you know, it's probably a little bit fascinating and a lot of it horrifying to see what happens when when you put enough people into a system that disregard the system, like
The system breaks
what does
down.
the system mean anymore? Yeah, and what does it mean for us going forward? Even if we went back to everything being like after Trump, if we went back to having more balance, like we still are going to have the same Supreme Court and everything too. So
Well, I think that kind of gets into the second part of her question. Can the
yeah,
United States function without a Supreme Court? Um,
what
my
I guess yeah. Okay, you go first.
my
If you have,
personal opinion on this is, um, can it function without a Supreme Court? No, I don't think so. Because I like how the founding fathers set up our government. I like that they made it three branches that equally, um, like they put checks and
separation
balances.
of power.
Yeah, separation of power, checks and balances. I love that they did checks and balances, because then it makes it so, like, if the executive and legislative branch are at odds, that you have the judicial branch to be typically to be an unbiased and arbiter, a third party that has no stake in any of the agendas of either legislative or executive, and someone that can, like I said, very unbiasedly judge what should be done in a given situation. Now, the hard thing that is going on right now, and what this questioner is asking about here, is that it has seemed recently like the judicial branch has started siding with the executive branch, and not even siding with the executive branch. It seems like all branches right now, currently all branches right now, well, legislative and executive right now are running on the Republican agenda. And it seems like the Supreme Court now, the judicial branch, is starting to be less biased and or less unbiased, impartial, and is starting to now gravitate towards that Republican agenda, and not only that Republican agenda, but really the Trump agenda, if you can call it that. I've heard a lot of people say that like it isn't really right now in office. We don't have the Republican Party; we have the Trumpist Party, um, and that it really has become something very different, because Trump doesn't go along with a lot of the stuff that Republicans are about or agree with. A lot of them are just agreeing with him because if they agree with him, they continue to get paid, um, which is really really horrible. So in the second part of her question, she says, "Can the United States function without a Supreme Court?" Well, let's put it into perspective. Let's play with this puzzle a little bit. Um, Say we just got rid of the Supreme Court right now. If we got rid of the Supreme Court right now, what happens is that the Republican Party would have unchecked power, and and that could even happen if both the legislative and executive branches are Democratic too. It would make it so that, unless there was a unless one side was always the opposite, unless we either had all Democratic, or the Democrats running the House and Senate for legislative, and we had Republicans doing the presidency, or vice versa, and we had Democrats in the presidency and Republicans in the House and Senate, um, then that kind of goes into her third question. Or can we rewrite the rules and say that they're must be equal representation both in both major parties, but I'm looking more to representation in both of the branches, because if we took out the judicial, we just have executive and legislative, and then how does that play? If they're opposites, then we have clashing and opposition, and if they're the same, then everybody in America who is on the opposite side feels like they're not being represented, and then they are angry at the government, and things are very bad for like certain groups of people. And so I what I would say, or what I would say at the end of all of this, is that I definitely think that the judicial branch is necessary, specifically because it at least gives everybody a fighting chance. It at least says or at least the Supreme Court should at least say, I pledge an oath to be unbiased, so that every side of the aisle has a fighting chance to get their agenda and their wants and desires heard. And honestly, in the past couple of weeks, I think this is starting to happen, specifically because just recently there were Trump went to Supreme Court hearings to overturn birthright citizenship, and they completely just looked him right in the face and said, absolutely not. We are not taking out the 14th Amendment. We're not doing that. And like, Trump got mad and literally stormed out of the Capitol building and down the stairs, because he was so mad that they wouldn't play ball, that they wouldn't play his game. And so I love that. And I think there definitely should keep being a judicial branch for moments like that on both sides. The judicial branch should stay there so that everybody has a fighting chance. And honestly, it would be great if every time you got in a political argument with someone on the other side, like, there would be someone to come up and be an unbiased judge of it. That would be absolutely amazing. And so that's why I think it's a good thing that the founding fathers put that in place. And I'm sorry, I really rambled and ran with that, but I wanted to give my thoughts on all three parts of the question.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and with her asking, there must be equal representation of both major parties. I don't know how you would really put equal representation in the executive branch unless we started saying, unless we completely rewrote the rules and said there are now two presidents who will work together and they will try to make combined decisions to come up with like better ideas. But yeah, the only way we would get equal representation is if we had two presidents, and then we could kind of do away with the more of the competition of elections and just say there will be a Democratic president and a Republican president. But I mean, that's already being done in the House and Senate, and I mean, really, it would be hard to have two presidents because the president is supposed to be the one person that has the final say. He or she is the one that puts the final stamp on something, and it would just be weird because it would require, if we had two presidents, it would require two people from opposite ideologies to agree on absolutely everything that was ever signed into law.
Yeah, nothing would ever get done, but that would be bipartisan.
Yeah. And so really, I think a better question would be, would that be a better world? Would you be more willing to live in a world where the government never got anything done, um, but everybody was represented fairly.
Well, it depends on what you're talking about for representation here too. Because does representation always mean a person in office, or does representation mean opportunity and access to uh fairly
Well,
being
then what
heard
do
and stuff?
Democrats
Because
and
like, right,
Republicans both agree on?
well, but what I'm saying is, like, could your representation also be stolen from you if you like gerrymandering and like the electoral college, which takes your vote and then just kind of basically doesn't really actually directly apply it into the election. It just creates a system of, well, this person is supposed to vote based on what they've been told and received and whatever, but they don't really have to, but they're supposed to. And there's like all this stuff where, are you really being represented in the first place, or are you buying into the illusion of representation? Perhaps maybe we do need to find a way to have representation, but then that means we need not necessarily to have two presidents at the same time, but to actually have it so that people's people are able to vote for who they want. There's so many systems that make it so
Well, I
that we're
mean,
not actually represented. We're
ideally
just
we
channeled
already
in.
have a system where people get to vote for who they want.
Yeah, but what I know, but what I'm saying is that, like, are we represented through the current system?
I mean,
Maybe for equal
that's what it.
representation, we need to make it so that your vote actually matters a little bit more, or so that you can't
Yeah,
be gerrymandered into a district where that, like, it means nothing. Like, there's just so many games that can be played. And I'm not even talking representation. I think that, as it's been asked in the question, I'm just taking it to one end, that the initial part of it.
yeah,
Is like a representation in government. Are we talking party representation? Are we talking equal representation amongst the branches? Are we talking what are we representing, or which representation aspect are we discussing? You know, because
yeah.
there's a lot of flawed representation, and but I guess since I never answered any of the questions, I will give you a far more abridged version. No, it won't work without the, the Supreme Court. The entire system is a legal system. Like, the basis of our government is laws, which basically is up to the system of the judicial system that we've created to interpret those laws. Those people's interpretations always essentially become the way that things are. Like, no matter how you write the law, whoever you choose to read the law is ultimately kind of what becomes the law, because there is so much baked in, unlike in the perfect world for a judge, where you'd be fair. But this is not in the system we have, and in any humanistic system where they can lie and cheat and there's incentives to do so, especially now. Like, I think, yeah.
Oh,
Again, what this just shows, though, I think more than anything, is that uh does it matter what system we have if people are not willing to play by the what would you call it? Not like the letter of the law, but like, there's intentions here, and you can never, like, we've all kind of created there's like the ideal version of what the government should be, and then there's the version where it's actually interpreted through the law, and then that just comes down to legalistic interpretations, and you lose kind of the spirit of the law, of what
understandable.
people are
Mike,
trying to represent. And then it turns into just, you can say whatever the heck you want about it, when the judicial, so, the the judicial part of the system has always carried a lot of power in the interpretation of the law, but that's why they don't get to write the law. That's why they only get to interpret the law, you know?
Right.
And
Mike, really,
so,
really quick. So the person who gave the question actually has commented on our video.
okay.
Um, so to
That's
Eben,
what I thought. Having two presidents is
yeah,
not.
Evan Barber Gillespie said, having two presidents has nothing to do with my question. Having the Supreme Court having to be grown up enough to have to find ways to compromise and find a way to agree on issues and results. And then she says, Mike, that's the question. What's the point of anything if each situation can make new rules?
Yeah, but then I don't have an answer to that. I'm just continuing the question because I don't think there is a point of anything if you can just do whatever you want. If they don't follow the rules and if they don't follow the spirit of the rules, if they come in and hijack the system and say they're the system now, then they can do whatever they want essentially. We just get to find out how far the general populace is willing to allow this before we start seeing more and more crazy reactions to it, you know? So, like going
They
back to the shooting
they
thing
agree
and
with you.
stuff like that, like I'm not condoning that people should be shooting people, but I'm saying like in times like these, it does not surprise me that these things are happening. And in times like these, things like that are going to continue happening more and more and more because people all don't know what the heck is going on and what to do. And people don't have any framework for what to do in a situation like this. None of us do. We're all in this together. And so if they don't have a community and they don't have proper outlets and they don't have ways of dealing with this, like I was asking you in the beginning, how are you dealing with this? Like what do you do with the people that have no way of dealing with this, that have no community, that have no support, that don't think anybody believes in them, that they just are going to fall off and go off and do either they're just going to harm themselves or they're going to harm other people, you know?
Yeah.
And that will be
I
targeted and at systems like this. So I think that what we're seeing now is the results of when the system falls apart and when people don't follow the rules. But then how do you do that? Can we continue playing by the same rules once we've broken them and we've demonstrated that you can break the entire system by stacking it like this? Because then it just seems like people now know we can do that, and going forward we might just get more people that are going to break the system. It's almost now like we have to develop a new system, or we all have to get so broken that we're finally willing to work together to fix this,
okay,
because
okay,
either we're
okay,
going to get
okay.
to the
Uh,
point where we work together to fix this because we have to, or there's not going to be an opportunity anymore, and then
Okay, but
everybody gets harmed.
how do we play out fixing it though? Because in essence, what
Well,
like what you are saying here is that if we fixed the system,
depends
then
on what we're fixing and where. Yeah. When
yeah,
I'm
if
talking about fix, I guess I'm talking about way more core level, just like the community itself, you
then there
know,
would be no
of where you
choice
live.
at all. Then there would just be like there is always like half of the representatives in the house in legislative are Democratic, half of the representatives in legislation are Republican,
No,
and
you're I what I'm talking about here is the human level of this. Like we all live together here. If we completely lose America and its entire system falls apart, and we still all live together here, and we still all have to work together, and we're going to end up developing other systems to do that because that's just how it works. So, with our system as completely broken as it can be now, I don't know what the future looks like or what we should do, but no matter what happens, we're going to have to, is what I'm saying. So we're going to, as communities of people and as a country, and as states and as everything, we're going to have to work together in some level at some point, you know? It just depends on how bad it gets before we start doing that.
That is true, and yeah, that is true. I I'm less on the bandwagon of I'm less on the bandwagon of the system is broken and we're gonna have to fix it. And I'm more on the bandwagon of like we have a good system. We just need good people in it.
I'm not saying
Uh,
the system is broken. I'm saying we've proven the system can be broken.
yeah,
That we
it
can
can
we
be
can
broken,
bypass the system by stacking it just
but it
right.
won't be broken by better people.
No, but I'm saying we've opened a door. We have opened a door showing that you can stack the system just right, that that system no longer works. And you
Yeah,
can do
that is
whatever you
true.
want.
Just because you
So
can take a
opening that
match
door
and set
is
a
a
house on
dangerous place to
fire
be.
doesn't mean everybody's going to do it.
Right, but if you're at a national level and things are getting crazier and crazier and crazier, do you think going forward, after they've shown that you can hijack the whole government and do whatever you want with it, that nobody else is going to try and hijack the whole government and do whatever they want with it ever again? Just wash your hands clean and move on. I don't think that's how it works. I think the idea, you know how you've watched V for Vendetta, you have like the mask and stuff. Ideas
Yes,
never die.
I
You think
yeah,
the
that is
idea
true.
we've created here that you can bypass the whole American system, government is going to die and nobody's ever going to use it again? That's crazy.
No, and that
So
ties
I'm not
into
saying that our government, like I'm not commenting on our government. I'm commenting on the fact that we've shown that you basically can completely and entirely bypass the entire system of our government. So however you feel of the system, now that you know we can bypass the entire system using the system, that's a dangerous place to be. That's all I'm saying.
that
What do we
is
do? How does America go forward if you want to continue using the systems we have, knowing that
yeah.
they can be broken? Do we completely rewrite our entire systems?
There needs to be
How do you close
watchdogs.
the things that led us here? Because legal loopholes and stuff aren't really the problem. The problem is, like I said, and like uh, I was agreeing with there, that we can do, like, if you put it, the entire group of people in every level of the government is all working together, then it doesn't matter what the rules are,
Yeah,
no matter what rules we make. So how do we now going forward not have this happen again? Because that's going to require people to work together to
yeah. How do we not have
not
it
do
happen?
this
Is
again.
we have watchdogs and we keep an eye out for people that match the personalities of the people that we don't want, and like hopefully the country will vote to keep those people out. And I mean, yeah, there really is nothing you can do but hope that better people will come along.
I
It,
also just think that like the we're so
and you can
divided
remake the
that
system, but
like,
what if you remake the system and it works worse than it does now?
well, no, that's what I'm saying. So what makes the system work in the first place? I think the only thing that makes this system work in the first place is that everybody agrees that the system works and they work together as though the system works. That's what made it a good system before.
Yeah.
So if
You
we
know me, I
want,
love tinkering, but don't reinvent the wheel.
but we've lost people working together on like a fundamental level in our, at least American society, on a large scale level. There's still much of like the cooperation stuff on smaller scale levels, and I'm not saying that's gone, but as a whole and as systems and of people coming together and working together, like we don't get along anymore. And so my hope at this point is only that maybe if things get bad enough, we'll realize that it's just because we're all not choosing to get along together and work together, and we could do a lot better things and have a better time if we chose to get along together and work together through our differences, because we've demonstrated that that's possible throughout many years of this country's history as well,
Learn
you
from the
know.
lesson of the ants.
we're in a different place now and we can't approach it like we did from the past. But we also have to all approach it together and we have to figure out ways that we can compromise on things. And I think that's a dying art. And I think that's what has led us to one party taking the whole system, is because we've lost the ability to work together and get we I can't think of a time in my lifetime even that like they've bipartisan have passed something through. But there are plenty of things where like they've done bipartisan things and there are compromises that have made everyone mad that has ended up working out. Like it's not about necessarily always making the best law. It's sometimes just about like that if we all want to work together and have the feeling of working together and stuff, like we have to do things to keep everybody happy and make compromises. And it's like basic stuff that they taught us in kindergarten when I was in kindergarten, like not saying mean things to each other and not like pointing, there's just so many things that we do nowadays where we've lost
Mhm.
respect for one another and
I
as
was going to
a
say
whole.
that is a great
And
segue, and we have about 10 minutes left.
okay, well, let me wrap up what I'm saying. I'll give you
Go
30
ahead.
more seconds. All right. I'm almost done. I'm just saying, like, basically, like, fundamentally, the core of our society is slowly slipping into not respecting or caring about one another, not seeing each other as human beings, not loving or caring for one another, not having, like, we've all just turned into mad, sad bullies and we need to knock it off and remember the stuff that they taught us when we were kids. And I'm not going to make anybody do anything. And so my only hope at
America
this
needs
point
my mom.
is that like if
America
everything
100%
gets
needs my
bad
mom.
enough, maybe people will realize that the system we've implemented of all this awfulness and people just being dicks is a bad system, and then maybe we'll start working together because we've seen the horrors of what happens when we don't work together anymore. Maybe that's the only hope I have at this point. People need to start feeling again for like
Yeah.
one another.
Or America just needs a big mother to come along and smack some sense into it.
If that does something, then I'm all for it.
Yeah.
Love
But
your neighbor, treat each other the way you want to be treated. You know, let things go. Take a breath, pause, move
true.
on.
But that is you said move on. That is a perfect.
That's why I'm done.
Okay. That is talking about us working together is actually a perfect segue into um, the big question of the day today, which we now have to answer in 8 minutes. God dang it! This happens every week. We have a huge philosophical question, and we try to answer it in like 10 minutes. It's almost like we're on brand or theme. But the question for today is, why do we follow the status quo? Now, Mike, is it okay if I give my thoughts first?
Go right ahead.
Okay. My thoughts on why we follow the status quo. And honestly, this question is more so, why are people good? Um, a lot of people may say that people are good because of morality or the religion that they have, or their upbringing, or how they grew up in the community and things like that. My opinion is that people are good and they follow the rules of the group around them because there is a deep core innate uh, desire for community and having support and having people around you. I feel like this is an evolutionary trait. It comes from uh, prehistoric caveman days, and the knowledge that if you were the one of your best tools, or one of humanity's best tools against elements and predators and the world around them, has always been having more people around them. The more people you have around you, the more skills you have around you, the more tools you have around you, the better you're equipped to face the dangers of the world. And I think people follow the rules because they don't want to be ostracized and isolated, because people at a core level know if they are ostracized and isolated, that typically means death or something very, very bad. And so, in essence, in short, I think people are good because they want to survive. And that's
Fair
why we
assessment.
follow the status quo.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I can't disagree too much with that. I don't what To clarify, like we spoke about earlier, when you say good, you just mean why do people fall in line and follow the rules of society when they don't have to?
Exactly, and I mean,
Yeah. Well, because that's
it's
just a little
there's
ambiguous. Just
different
saying
rules in
why are they
different
good?
societies too.
That's a lot.
Yeah,
So I need to make sure I understand what you mean by good here.
there's different rules in different societies too, um,
Because
and in
following
different
society is
contexts.
not always good, quote unquote, either.
Yeah,
There's plenty of social
like
things we do that aren't
in
necessarily good.
in civilian society, there is a law of don't kill other people. That changes when you are a soldier in war and they say you are now allowed to kill other people. And that may even conflict with your moral laws too. So different societies, different contexts, um, all have different rules, and sometimes it's weird. Sometimes it's difficult to try to uh, follow like all of the rules of the at the same time.
What I guess my question, we got like 3.5 minutes here. So where
Mm-hmm.
does this status quo come from and what defines it, And when does it change? Because it changes all the time. But like at what point, you know?
Well, what is you asked? What is the status quo?
Like, yeah, what
The
because is
status
it always the
quo,
same everywhere?
yeah, the status quo
Is
is
it
a
a
set of
localized
rules,
phenomenon?
and rules are typically put in place in order to prevent negative outcomes. Usually, because those negative outcomes have already happened.
But who
Um,
made these rules?
who
Who made the
hmm,
status quo's rules?
who made the status quo rules? Humanity, and I suppose that they developed these rules over time, and they developed
But
them
all of
by gaining
humanity made the
wisdom.
same status quo, or is it a localized phenomenon?
Well, I mean, that's what I said. There is a different status quo in many different places.
And is the status quo the right way? You use the word good specifically. Do you find following the status quo to be morally right?
Do I think following the status quo is morally right?
Yeah,
Um, Sometimes,
fair.
yeah. Sometimes, I mean, if the status quo like a great example is the movie The Purge. In the movie The Purge, the status quo changes and it says for one night you are allowed to do any crime. Now there are people who definitely would say, I don't care if there's a purge, I'm not committing any crimes because I morally do not want uh to break the rules that I have agreed to. um but then there are some people who are like, hey, I don't care if I can legally get away with something, then I will do it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Cause there's so many things. Like if you go into the 50s, like
there's a legal
what
status
about
quo
like
and there's a
socially
moral status quo.
ostracizing a woman from a community because she wore jeans instead of a skirt or something like that?
Yeah.
Or like if you're in a community that practices 65-year-old men getting married to 11-year-old girls, is that okay? That's the status quo.
Yeah. And yeah, that's why I said there's different status quos in different places.
Yeah.
And
So
and also with your example of ostracizing a woman for wearing something, the status quo develops and evolves over time.
right.
Yeah.
So now, at what point do you think we've finally removed? Because our status quo now is removed from survival. It probably was once rooted in survival, but at what point do you believe that our the status quo separated itself from pure survival and it's just started turning into kind of a reflection of where we were at as a society, you know?
Yeah.
Because I would say the status quos that
Barb
we've
here
known
says
about,
Barb here says status quo is culturally specific based on history, geography, faith, etc.
yeah, see, that's what I was trying to
Yeah.
get at from you. That's the way I see it, but I wasn't sure if that's the way you saw it or not. So
Yeah.
I wanted
And
to
I
get at to
agree
what you're describing.
and I agree with all that it is specific based on history, well, yeah, but all of that history, geography, and faith, because it, that's what I think is cool is that the status quo evolves over time.
Well, and my
Um,
main point too that I was just trying to make is like, why were? Can you explain to me why you use the word good to describe that?
well, I guess I use the word good because it might not be a good word to equate to the status quo, but
I don't like
it
the
is.
phrasing. That's why I asked.
Yeah, it is. It is the closest equivalent I can really think of. Barbara says, "Are there any universally cultural truths like courage?" That is a great question. Um, are there any universally cultural truths like courage? I mean, I think courage
Hmm.
is a great example that's universally
So
accepted.
is this in regards to like the status quo, or are we going a different direction? Like socially recognized the courage as being beneficial?
What is something that everyone in the world agrees on?
That is like that is like a human. I That's a really hard question to say. What does I don't think universally recognized means everyone agrees with, but what's something that would be across every culture?
Well, she's a universal
Many,
culture.
yeah, yeah. Well, I don't think everybody agreeing on it means it's culturally or status quo. I think it's, but I would think, I would hope that like maybe some of the core things like not murdering other people in your group, but like courage as yeah. So like I don't know. Do you think every culture recognizes courage even nowadays? I think that there's
Um,
definitely there has been and is probably emphasis on courage in certain regards. Like if you're in the military or something, but like does the culture encourage courage for like everybody? I don't know. They don't really like courage when you're a whistleblower. Or like when you have yeah, damning information of other but like to encourage young men and young women too, anybody to encourage people to be more courageous to face their fears and to walk like I don't think every culture recognizes that, but I think that that is a good sign of your culture if you recognize the ability to face fear and move forward in the face of fear as a useful thing, because I think that is sort of something that is like a coming of age thing in a
yeah.
sense, you know.
I think that lots of cultures having different. I don't know if I should say status quo here, but beliefs is it makes for great diversity throughout the world.
Yeah, and that's a very loose thing too, because status quo does that always mean like it's basically just like kind of like what's frowned upon on
I
a
can
large
probably
scale level and what is encouraged on a large
I could
scale level.
probably think of something. I think universally the protection of women and children is probably a universally cultural rule or idea.
Right, but like, what if you live in prison for like uh, pedophiles or whatever, and you have to, that's your community, is those people that live there. Do you think those people in their community uphold the status quo of protecting women and children?
I
So I
mean,
don't think you can apply anything
that would
universally like that,
literally
because
be the darkest parts of society
right, but can you
if you were
exclude the
in a group
darkest
like
parts of
that.
society from everything? If we're talking about everything, you can't exclude the darkest parts of society. That doesn't mean that that's a good thing to look at. That's why I'm saying maybe instead of saying courage is a universally accepted truth, um, say protecting children
Say
at your own
protect
risk.
you
What
on
is
your
the
own risk. Not in some
yeah.
religious cultures, women and children have uh,
Yeah, exactly. So
no
that's what I'm
right.
saying. Like it doesn't exist universally. So instead of trying to find something that exists universally, maybe just identifying it as something that is a very good sign of a culture if it recognizes that, you know? Because, like I said, I don't think every single culture protects women and children. I don't think every single culture, not even every single culture says don't kill. If we're going to look at every minute subculture and every tiny aspect of everything in the whole world, I don't think we're going to find any universal truth other than we're all here. Like their moral system, I guess, or their status quo probably includes recognizing that we're all here together. Or but maybe there's people that even disagree with that. They're just like, nah, that's not true. We're not
I
here together.
mean,
It's like
if you want to get into like
I can't
religious
find
texts
something
and
universal.
yeah,
I can only find things that I think are a very good indication of the direction that a culture is going.
if
You
you want
know?
to get into like religious texts, I mean, in the Bible, God does give the world a status quo. He says, uh, um, "Tend to the gardens, protect and raise the animals, and be fruitful and multiply." So, like at
But
the
that's just instructions. That's not like societal rules. You know, when we're saying status quo, I'm just thinking of the unwritten rules of society. I mean, I'm also including some of the written rules, like don't murder people and stuff like that. So it's like, but just, you know, like the things that people value combined together and where they stem from and that kind of stuff, you know? Because there's not going to be universally every community of every group of people is all going to have the same things. And I don't want my morals to align with some communities.
yeah,
How would you feel if you found out that you lined up like 95% with like the KKK or something? I wouldn't be super happy if I found that. I'd be like, no, what did I do
that's
wrong?
true.
I did something wrong now.
And I mean, we were talking about like the darkest corners of society,
Yeah.
and and like I will say, there is the status quo, and then there are the people who are ostracized and isolated from the status quo. If one person decides they're not going to follow the rules, they are alienated
Yeah, you get the good old
from the rest
fashioned
of
shunning.
from shunning from the rest of the group. But then that person may find other people who are also shunned from for thinking what they think, and
Yeah, well,
then
but
that
that's
group
again why there's
starts
not one
becoming
status
another
quo.
status. That group starts becoming another status quo.
You can find a bunch of loosely general cultural things that exist for like America as a whole through certain periods and times, but every single like place is slightly different and has their own subcultures and has their own slightly different status quo. And some people right next to each other in the same communities have exactly different and opposite beliefs of that and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's
The
just hard
status quo
to
is literally people saying either I'm cool with that or I'm not cool with that.
Because I just think ultimately your question really is asking like what makes us comply with the mindset of the group that we're in and taking part of in the community and stuff. And
It is
probably just like
deciding.
the social aspect, like you said, yeah.
Yeah,
If
it is
I
deciding that being part of a group is more important than if I agree or disagree with with the beliefs of the group and the rules of the group.
But some people are so in need of a community and a group of people that they are willing to even try and lead themselves to believe that they agree with them in order to not lose access to that.
True.
Because a community is a very valuable thing to people. I mean, I think that's really what, when you look at a lot of like this stuff of people are like, how could you still be like a Trump person or whatever this far in and all that? And like, I mean, that's at this point, there's a lot of people jumping ship, but throughout the whole process, when I've watched people not leave that, like, I know a big chunk of their like hierarchy of needs, if you want to go to that, is having a community to feel safe. And you don't
Yeah.
want to give up your community because they're wrong or because it's bad for like that's so it's very easy to delude yourself when you might lose your own culture and group. You might everything could fall apart for you if you disagree with those kind of people, you know.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you built your life around other people and have their support
Yeah,
and stuff like that, then sometimes
but
you really don't have a choice but to follow the status quo.
again, it's just like we've really eroded the concept of what community is to the point that, like, we used to all have to you'd have all the different groups
Yeah.
that had their own different status quos and they
If
had to
you if
coexist.
you live with your parents and don't follow the rules, they might kick you out. I mean, that's at least a simple allegory for it.
Yeah, in a sense, yeah.
Barbara here says, gangs, children who grow younger in a nonviolent home but at school are bullied and shunned, so they are taken in by a group that goes against everything you learn. So, oh yeah, gangs, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And why do you think people get funneled into that? And then, even if it goes against everything you've learned, now suddenly you've got role models and you've got people filling roles that you've so desired for your entire life, and they're bad role models and they lead you to violence and death. But I get why, like, psychologically, what could drive a person to do that. Plus, just sometimes you're forced in that situation and complying is
Hmm.
safer for you than to resist
So,
if you're a child and stuff.
what is the big answer at the end of the day? The question of the day: why do we follow the status quo? I guess you could say it's for our own reasons.
Well, that's a real cop out, but I would just to say for community, for the sake of
It is a real cop out.
satisfying the
We've
need
run out
for
of
community,
time
to satisfy the need for community.
to satisfy the need for community.
That's my answer. That's a lot better than for people's own
Yeah,
reasons. Cop out, that's dumb. Not a good answer.
yeah. To satisfy the need
Mine
for
maybe isn't a better answer, but it at
yeah
least sounds
to
better.
satisfy the need for community, but I will add in order to survive the world.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to take away
Yeah,
for survival is a much better answer. Use that as your answer.
yeah. Why do people follow
The
the status
first answer
quo?
was not a good
For
answer.
survival.
Yeah, much better answer. I'm okay with this.
All right,
All right.
that is way over our time. We are
Oh
like
my goodness, 13
14,
whole minutes. What are we going to do? We
14
violated our
minutes over
status
time.
quo.
We
We had
did.
to break the status quo of this podcast, though, for this episode. Just
Yes.
otherwise, it wouldn't be right.
We
So
must be
you're
ostracized,
welcome.
shun, shame.
All right.
But yeah, that is our time for today. Um,
Thank you for
Barb here.
watching and interacting with
Yes.
us, Barb.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Barb. Um, belonging is powerful.
Yes, agreed.
That is a great truth, and that is a great truth to
And
end us off
sometimes it's
today.
more powerful than doing the right thing in the moment.
Okay. But yeah, that is all for episode 3 of the Great Minds podcast. If you want to see more that we've talked about, go back. We are on YouTube. I don't know if we're on Spotify yet, Mike. You were supposed to
No,
work
because
on that.
I forgot, so I'll get to that.
Yeah, but yeah, we are on YouTube. We will be putting episodes on Spotify soon. But yeah, you can go back and look at the past videos. We've talked about pride. We've talked about greed. We didn't really cover a deadly sin today,
Ah,
did we? In any way, did we cover a deadly sin today?
I don't think so.
We'll get back to it. We'll get on a deadly sin again at some point. But yeah, that is all for today. Once again, my name is Uriah Gillespie, philosopher.
And I'm Michael Hasseth.
All
Just
right.
just
Uh,
Michael.
yep. We don't know what the ultimate question is, but the answer, as always, will be 42. See you later, YouTube. Bye bye. Don't know where my hand is. Bye bye.